The state may call its next witness.
Your Honor, this time the state calls Melissa Loren.
Okay, good morning. Please stand behind the witness chair and raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully testify in connection with this case?
I do.
Please have a seat. Remove your mask. I'm going to give you some rules for testifying. The court reporter is taking down everything being said, so you have to answer with a yes or a no instead of shaking your head. No, or because that's not a clear record. If you don't understand a question, let the lawyer know. Only one person can speak at a time, so wait until the question's finished before you answer. And finally, if an objection is made, stop talking. Don't answer the question unless I tell you to.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Counsel?
Ms. Loren, could you state your occupation for the record?
I work at the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in the Forensic Science Lab, and I am the technical leader of our crime scene team.
How long have you been employed by the BCA?
I've worked there just over 11 years.
Could you please tell the jury about your education and training?
My education, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in biology from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. And my training in forensics, most of it has come from my employment at the BCA. I have training in mitochondrial DNA, which is part of our missing persons group, nuclear DNA, forensic hair comparisons, which I obtained out at Quantico, the FBI lab, and a lot of crime scene training. My training is to be a team leader is in evidence collection, processing, and report writing.
I just want to take a step back for a moment. Can you discuss the duties of the Bca Crime Lab generally?
Yes, our crime lab is made up mostly of scientists. They examine items of evidence to assist in investigations of criminal cases. And we have multiple different sections. So we have a biology section that focuses on DNA and body fluid identification. We also have a latent print section, firearms and tool marks, trace evidence, drug chemistry, toxicology, and then our crime scene team is also part of the forensic lab.
Is the crime scene lab an accredited lab?
Yes, we are.
And does the crime lab go through an evaluation process to maintain that accreditation?
Yes, we do.
And as part of that evaluation or audit process, is your work or proficiency or competency also evaluated?
Yes, it is.
And how often is that done?
We have a full accreditation audit every 4 years, and then a surveillance visit every year, and then we also do an internal audit every year.
Okay. As a crime scene team leader, could you describe your present duties?
Sure. As a team leader, I lead a team of scientists out at crime scenes. I lead them in everything from documentation of the crime scene, so that would be photography, video, also note-taking about our observations and diagramming. And then I lead them in crime scene processing, so things like latent prints, collection of samples for DNA, things like that, and then also evidence collection and packaging.
And overall, would you agree that you've been trained on a number of skills personally in forensic science?
Yes, I have.
And that would include these subject matter of collecting and handling evidence and collecting DNA and testing DNA.
Yes.
Would you also agree that you're trained in bloodstain pattern analysis?
Yes, I am.
All right. Now, you've testified in court as an expert before.
Yes, I have.
All right. Now, on what sort of cases does the crime scene team respond to?
Our team responds to homicides, death investigations, missing persons cases, officer-involved shootings or use of force cases, and also clandestine grave recoveries.
When you respond to a scene, what duties does that typically entail?
Responding to a scene, the duties I have are, again, leading the team, making sure that everything is documented appropriately. So overall photographs and video are taken, items of evidence are identified and marked as items of evidence, and those are also photographed. I lead the team in the processing of anything that we need to process depending on the scene circumstances, and then the collection of the evidence, the packaging of the evidence. I'm also responsible for ensuring that evidence is sealed appropriately, brought back to our laboratory for secure storage, and then I coordinate with our agents on the forensic testing of those items.
Okay. I want to talk about one more topic generally before we get into the April 11th, and this is just about the process by which you collect an item and keep track of it. Could you describe how that work is done?
Sure. So when an item is identified at a scene and we decide that we're going to collect it, we put an item number next to it and have a photo taken of that item with that item number. That item number stays with that item from the crime scene through the forensic testing in the lab and all the way to court. Those items are marked on the packaging. We barcode those packages so that they can be tracked throughout the laboratory. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Why don't we move on to April 11th of 2021? Were you on duty that day?
I was on call that day, yes.
Okay. And what, did you respond to a communication that afternoon?
Yes, I did.
What did that communication pertain to?
I received a phone call and was told that there had been an officer-involved shooting in Brooklyn Center.
What did you do in response to that call?
I notified my team that's on call that we were going to be responding to a scene. I do that by sending out a text message, basically. And then we met at the BCA laboratory.
Why do you go to the BCA lab first? Pardon me, the BCA lab, that's in St. Paul, right?
Correct.
Why do you go to the BCA lab first?
We go to the BCA lab so I can get a laboratory case number for the case, and then we also take our crime scene response vehicle out to the scene. That vehicle has everything inside of it that we need for packaging and evidence processing.
Okay. And did you ultimately respond to the scene of the shooting in Brooklyn Center?
Yes, I did.
And was that at the intersection of 63rd Avenue and Catherine Drive?
Yes.
Do you recall when you arrived at the scene?
We arrived at 4:45 p.m.
Okay. And how many people were on your team when you arrived?
It was myself. I had my team member, a technician, an additional team member that I was mentoring for crime scene team leader training, and our photographer.
What did you do when you first arrived?
When we first arrived, we had a briefing with Special Agent Mike Phil.
And as you came to the scene, did you, based on your training and experience, sort of define what the scene actually was going to be for you?
Yes.
And what was that?
Mike Phil gave us information about...
The objection is overruled. You may continue.
I believe when we left off, the question was, how did you define the crime scene based on the information you obtained?
The briefing information I was given gave us the overall location of where to focus on to look for items of evidence. And we were told that there had been a traffic incident and an officer had fired their firearm. After that, there had been a vehicle collision and the driver of one of the vehicles was deceased on scene.
After you observed the general appearance of the scene, what did you begin to do?
So the first thing that I did was have a walkthrough of the scene so I could observe everything before we started any type of processing or documentation. Then I had overall photographs and video taken of the area, and then I started to identify items of evidence and mark those items so that they could be placed into a diagram, and we started collecting those items at that time.
At some point, were there items located at the scene that you did document and mark?
Yes.
Is there a specific area where you directed your attention at the scene?
We directed our attention around the Buick vehicle that Mr. Wright was said to have been driving, and also the area where we were told that the traffic stop had occurred.
And did you look for any evidence that you believed to be pertinent to the investigation inside the vehicle?
Yes, I did.
Did you locate something that attracted your attention at that time?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
I found a cartridge case on the front driver's seat of the vehicle.
Okay. And are you familiar with the terminology of discharge cartridge casing, or DCC?
Yes, I am.
Is the item that you found frequently referred to as a discharge cartridge casing, or DCC?
Yes.
Could you unpack for the jury what a discharge cartridge casing is?
Sure. When you load a pistol with ammunition, the ammunition itself is actually called a cartridge. The cartridge is a cartridge case that's holding the projectile or the bullet. So when the firearm is fired, the bullet dislodges from the cartridge case and the bullet goes down the barrel of the gun. And the cartridge case is typically ejected out of the chamber of the gun, and they can be found at shooting scenes.
Okay. And you noted the location of this DCC?
Yes, I did.
And did you mark its location with an evidence marker?
Yes.
Am I correct that you assigned it evidence marker 7?
Yes.
And did you eventually collect the discharge cartridge casing?
Yes, I did.
And that was retained by the BCA throughout this investigation?
Yes.
And that maintained and retained that item number 7 throughout the investigation, correct?
Yes, it did.
Following your on-scene examination of the vehicle, what was done with that white Buick?
The white Buick was tape sealed and then towed to our BCA headquarters processing garage for further examination.
Okay. Was there another damaged vehicle on the scene?
Yes, there was.
What was done with that vehicle?
That vehicle was documented on scene and then was also towed, but not to our processing garage.
In addition to the discharge cartridge casing, were there other items that you collected from the scene?
Yes, we collected various items that we found along 63rd Avenue North.
Okay. And you documented and recovered those items as well?
Yes.
Okay. In addition to the physical items, did your investigation lead to an examination of Mr. Wright?
Yes, it did.
Okay. And at that time, when you arrived, he was placed under a tent?
Yes.
Okay. And are you aware that the Henner County Medical Examiner came to the scene?
Yes, he did.
And were you present when they were examining the body at the scene?
Yes.
Okay. And ultimately, Mr. Wright's body was transported away from the scene, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall what time that occurred?
He was transported at 6:40 p.m.
Okay. Now, did you create a scene map which shows the location of items that you recovered?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And Does that also include the location of where you located item number 7, the discharge cartridge casing?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, the state offers Exhibit 161, scene map.
Any objection to 161? 161 will be admitted and you may publish.
Ms. Loren, the jury has seen a couple of maps without markings on them throughout this trial, but could you describe the location depicted on this image at this time?
Sure. This is a top-down view of 63rd Avenue North running east and west. And at this location here is Catherine Drive.
Okay. And then I just want to direct your attention to the intersection of 63rd Avenue and Catherine Drive. Would you agree that there's a red number 7 at that intersection?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Could you just testify as to where that was located?
Yes, so the white rectangle in the diagram is depicting the location where the Buick sedan was, and the 7 is where our discharge cartridge case, item number 7, was collected from the front driver's seat of that car.
Thank you. You can take that on, Mr. Moore. I now want to go through a few photographs from the scene. In preparation for trial, did you review with me and recognize a series of photographs?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, at this time, the state offers Exhibits 162 to 174, noting that 166 and 167 are already admitted.
Okay, any objection to those exhibits?
It would appear 169 and 170 are otherwise no objection.
Those exhibits will be admitted subject to over the objection of defense counsel. And you may publish, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, Ms. Loren, I will show you Exhibit 162. And what I'll do, Ms. Loren, is ask you to describe what's shown on the screen in each image to assist the jury in understanding your testimony, okay? This first one, Exhibit 162, could you describe what you see on the screen?
This is a photo taken from 63rd Avenue North facing east. We're facing the area where you can see the white Buick sedan on the northwest corner of Catherine Drive. On the right, you can see our Bca crime scene response vehicle is on scene. And in the center median there, you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but there is a traffic sign that's down in that area.
Let's move to Exhibit 163 to see if that assists. What is shown here in Exhibit 163?
This is that center median on 63rd Avenue North with the down traffic sign.
Okay, and could you assist the jury? Can you, with a pen or finger, circle where you see the down traffic sign?
Here is the broken metal, and here is the sign.
Thank you, and I'm showing you you're identifying the sign right center in the middle of the picture, sort of toward the top third of the image, correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Now Exhibit 164. You'd agree this is just, again, looking east down 63rd at the damaged vehicles?
Correct, yes.
Exhibit 165. Would you agree this is also looking east down 63rd at the damaged vehicles, but a bit closer up, to see both of them on the screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Exhibit 166. What is shown here?
This is the front end of the Buick sedan, showing some front end damage, and the driver door was open upon our arrival.
There appears to be some black equipment on the ground in front of the vehicle. Can you identify what that is?
It appears to be a police shield.
Exhibit 167 now, Mr. Miller. What is shown here?
This is the passenger front side of the Buick, showing a defect in the passenger windshield.
Okay. 168. What is shown here?
This is the front driver's side of the Buick, showing the front driver's side seat.
Okay. Exhibit 169. Would you agree this is just a image down, looking down at the ground of the front driver's seat?
Yes.
We're going to see a close-up in a minute, but in this image, can you see the discharge cartridge casing?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm now showing Exhibit 171. Could you tell the jury what you see in Exhibit 171?
This is the discharge cartridge case on the front driver's seat, marked as item number 7.
Okay. Exhibit 172. Would you agree that 172 is just an image of the top of the discharge cartridge casing after it was recovered?
Yes.
Okay. Exhibit 173. What is this shown?
This is a photo of a backpack that was outside of the front driver's door that we were told had been in the vehicle at some point in time.
And what did you do with that bag when you saw it?
We documented the bag, and I looked inside of it quickly to see if there was anything significant inside, and then I put it on the front driver floor to be towed back to the BCA with the vehicle and its contents.
Okay. And then Exhibit 174. And would you agree this is just the tent that was placed around Mr. Wright's body when you were present at the scene?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. You can take that down, Mr. Miller. Now, you reported that you collected that single discharge cartridge casing from the scene, and you eventually inventoried that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Your Honor, the state offers Exhibit 200, which I'm going to retrieve in a moment, the discharge cartridge casing.
Any objection to 200? Okay, 200 will be admitted into evidence.
Ms. Loren, I'm going to show you a few things today. I'm going to try to walk close up to you, probably not hand you anything, just so that you have an opportunity to see it, okay?
Sure.
Ms. Loren, I've just shown you Exhibit 200. Do you recognize what that is?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
That is our BCA lab, item number 7, the discharge cartridge case from the front driver's seat.
How long did you remain at the scene?
We were there for just under 3 hours.
Prior to your departure, did you receive several additional physical items from another BCA agent?
Yes, I did.
And what agent was that?
Special Agent Sam McGinnis.
And what did you receive?
I received a toxicology kit from Officer Potter and 2 firearms, one from Officer Johnson and one from Officer Potter.
Okay. And when you received the 2 firearms, did you get information as to how to differentiate them?
Yes, the boxes had markings on them as to which firearm was which, and then there was also a receipt that had information on it that matched each firearm.
Okay. The condition of Sergeant Johnson's firearm, was it loaded, unloaded, or something else?
Sergeant Johnson's firearm was unloaded.
Okay. Did it have a magazine inserted in it?
No, it did not.
And Officer Potter's gun?
Officer Potter's gun contained the firearm and the magazine that had ammunition in it and a 1 cartridge in the box.
Okay. Now, did you assign those firearms evidence numbers as well?
Yes, I did.
And what was Johnson's gun identified as?
Item number 12.
And Potter's gun was identified as?
Item number 13.
Okay. And after you documented and identified those with Crime Lab numbers, did those leave the scene with you?
Yes, they did.
And were they later inventoried at the BCA?
Yes, they were.
And did you follow your typical protocol of photographing and documenting those items prior to actually putting them in the evidence vault?
Yes, I did.
Okay. If I showed you 2 photographs you took of Sergeant Johnson's firearm, BCA item number 12, would you recognize them?
Yes.
Okay. The state offers exhibits 167 and 177, photographs of Sergeant Johnson's firearm.
Any objections? 167 and 177 will be admitted into evidence.
Yes, please, first 176. It's part of it. To clarify, I may have misspoke. It's 176 and 177. Everyone's head nodded. I just didn't hear myself.
Thank you.
176. I'm showing you Exhibit 176 at this time. What is shown on the screen?
This is Sergeant Johnson's firearm,
Okay.
item 12.
And the Post-it note may be heavily washed out on certain screens. Can you see a Post-it note on the top of this image which has a number on it?
Yes, I do.
And what number is identified there?
12.
12. Okay. The next Exhibit 177, Mr. Miller. What is shown here?
This is the serial number of Sergeant Johnson's firearm.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's now move on to Officer Potter's firearm. If I showed you a series of photographs you took of that firearm, would you recognize them?
Yes, I would.
The state at this time offers Exhibits 178 to 183, photographs of Potter's gun and ammo.
No objection.
Okay, those exhibits will be admitted into evidence, and you may publish the photos.
Thank you. Let's start with Exhibit 178. What do you see in Exhibit 178, Ms. Loren?
This is Officer Potter's firearm and the loose cartridge that's in the box, as well as the magazine that was loaded.
Okay. And Exhibit 179. What's shown here?
This is the serial number of Officer Potter's firearm.
180? Is this just an image sort of the loaded magazine which you can see has live ammunition in it?
Yes.
Exhibit 181? Is this the live round which is taken from the chamber of the firearm?
Yes, it is.
Exhibit 182? Is this just a close-up view of the magazine which shows that it's loaded with ammunition?
Yes.
And then Exhibit 183. Could you explain to the jury what is shown in Exhibit 183?
When I received the firearm and did this documentation, I removed all of the cartridges out of the magazine for photo documentation to inventory how many rounds were in the magazine.
And that's what's shown in this image?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Loren, if I showed you the actual firearm, Potter's firearm, would you recognize it?
Yes.
At this time, the state offers Exhibit 199, Your Honor.
No objection.
199 will be admitted. Members of the jury, I've already advised you that the gun has been secured and cannot be discharged. Okay.
Ms. Loren, I'm approaching this Exhibit 199. You can see the sticker there on the top of this box. What do you see in front of you?
I see Officer Potter's firearm. It is a Glock 9mm semi-automatic pistol and the magazine.
If I showed you the ammunition which was removed from Officer Potter's firearm, would you recognize it?
Yes.
State offers Exhibit 202.
Make objection. 202 will be admitted.
Now, this might take a second for you to describe this, how this is set up, Ms. Loren. Would you agree there's an evidence sticker 202 on there, right?
Yes.
And then here, there's an individual live round. What is shown on this part of the exhibit?
This is the cartridge that was said to be taken out of the chamber of the gun.
Okay, and then there's a collection of live firearms in another part of this exhibit. Would you agree this is the live ammo that was taken from the magazine?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to another topic. You previously testified that Mr. Wright's white Buick was towed, right?
Yes.
Did you ever examine that vehicle again?
Yes, I did.
And when was that?
The following morning on April 12th at around 10 o'clock in the morning.
And where did that search occur?
That occurred at the BCA headquarters processing garage in St. Paul.
And when you began to search the vehicle, was it still secured with the tape that you placed on it the day before?
Yes, it was.
Who was present when you searched the vehicle?
It was myself. I had the same people that were on my team at the scene, except for the technician. So I had a team member that was in team leader training, and also an agent to do the photographs.
What actions were taken beyond photographs when you conducted the search?
So I marked items of evidence inside of the vehicle that I could see clearly and had photos taken of those. And then I also removed all of the contents of the vehicle and separated them out by the area they were found in, and then took photos of those areas and then marked additional items of evidence.
And you generated a report documenting the search?
Yes.
Okay. And when you searched the vehicle, you did take a substantial number of photographs, correct?
Our photographer did, yes.
Yeah. And you've reviewed a set of 7 photographs prior to trial, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state offers exhibits 184 to 190 photographs of the inside of Wright's vehicle at the time of the search warrant.
Is there any objection to 184 to 190?
We checked the 184 through 186.
Oh, okay.
That's redundant.
All right. I've already made rulings on that. I'm going to admit 184 to 190 over the defense objections, and you may publish.
Thank you, Your Honor. Prior to showing Exhibit 184, what is the value of taking photographs in the crime lab facility rather than on the scene?
When it's possible, which is usually with vehicles, we just have a more controlled environment in our processing garage. We have better lighting, plus we don't have anyone from the general public around to see the contents when we put them out.
Okay, thank you. 184, Mr. Miller. Could you describe what's shown here?
This is the front driver's seat of the Buick.
Exhibit 185. What's shown here?
This is the front driver floor of the Buick, showing a shoe.
186. What is shown on Exhibit 186?
This is a photo of the Buick taken from the rear driver's side, showing the center console area.
So you'd agree this photograph is essentially taken as someone would be standing outside next to the rear driver's side door, looking past the front driver's seat into the front area of the vehicle, correct?
Yes.
187. What is shown in Exhibit 187?
This is a photo of the interior of the vehicle taken from the perspective of the front passenger side.
Exhibit 188. What is shown here?
This is the front passenger side of the vehicle, showing the defect in the passenger side window.
Did you more closely examine the defect in the front passenger side window?
Yes.
Did you recover any physical evidence from that interior of the window?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
I recovered apparent hair from the interior of the defect.
Exhibit 189, Mr. Miller. What is shown here?
This is the front passenger headliner area from the perspective of the driver's side.
Okay. And that was a very clear description to me, but I've seen this image, so I want to be clear. Would it be accurate to say the perspective of this image is perhaps someone who is maybe even seated in the driver's seat or in that area of the driver's seat, looking up at what I call like the ceiling of the vehicle above the passenger seat?
Yes, that's correct.
All right.
All right, counsel, we're going to take a break, a 20-minute break, okay? All right, members of the jury, 20 minutes. Okay, you may step down. All right, counsel, let's take a break. Okay, please be seated. Mr. Larson, you may.
Thank you. Prior to the break, Ms. Loren, I think we were on our last image that had been admitted. That would be Exhibit 190. And you'd agree that is a photograph of the back seat from the driver's side?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, in addition to searching and photographing the vehicle, did you spend any time examining the apparent blood evidence in the vehicle?
Yes, I did.
Can you describe what you did?
We have a chemical test that we use on stains that are visually consistent with blood. We take a small sample of the stain, add some chemicals to it, and if it turns pink, it indicates that blood is present. If it doesn't turn colors, we conclude that blood was not detected.
Did you identify certain locations and then swab them to obtain samples of that?
Yes, I did.
And could you explain what you do with those swabs once you collect them?
Once the swabs are collected, we package them in manila envelopes, seal them, put a barcode on them as an inventory, and then securely store them until they can go up to the DNA section.
When you collect a a swab of blood, do you assign the location where you collected that from with another specific number?
Yes, we use item numbers for that as well.
Okay. And do you take photographs that mark those locations so we can look back at images you took to identify specifically where you took samples of the blood in the car?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, Your Honor, the State offers Exhibits 191 to 198, photographs of blood samples taken from the vehicle.
Any objection to 191 to 198? Those exhibits will be admitted into evidence and you may publish.
Okay. Now, Ms. Loren, you'd agree that essentially these 8 exhibits are in pairs. There are 2 photographs per 4 blood samples that you collected, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let's look at the first blood sample. This would be starting with Exhibit 191. Could you describe the location of this blood sample?
This is on the front driver's seat,
Right.
item 22.
And you can see that it's item number 22 in the front driver's seat, yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's just look at Exhibit 192 now. And you agree that is just a close-up image of that item, that blood item number 22?
Yes.
Okay. Now Exhibit 193. What is shown here in Exhibit 193?
These are bloodstains on the front passenger dashboard marked as Area A.
Okay. Let us look now at Exhibit 194. Now, you said that was Area A, but is there a specific item number identified, a specific blood sample identified with a particular BCA lab item number?
Yes, one stain was collected from this area as item 25.
Okay. Exhibit 195. Okay, what area of the vehicle is shown here?
This is that passenger side headliner or ceiling of the vehicle marked as Area B.
Okay, now this image is from a slightly different perspective than we saw the headliner from the last image, correct?
Correct.
Would you agree that this image perhaps could have been taken by someone leaning down outside the passenger side door looking up at the ceiling of the car?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Exhibit 198. Strike that, 196. What is shown here, Ms. Loren?
This is a blood stain that was collected from that passenger side headliner as our item number 26.
Okay. Now exhibit 197, Mr. Miller. You'd agree this is an image looking into the rear of the vehicle?
Correct.
Okay, let's go to exhibit 198. This is zooming in on a particular blood sample, correct?
Yes.
And what item number is this?
This is our item number 27.
Okay. You can take that down. Speaking of your lab generally, would you agree that the crime lab conducted some forensic testing of certain items as part of this investigation?
Yes, they did.
And some DNA testing did take place?
Yes.
And the item numbers assigned by you of those blood samples stayed with the swabs of those blood samples throughout the investigation?
Yes.
And the DNA testing was performed by your colleague, forensic scientist Eric Copen?
That is correct.
Okay. In addition to the DNA testing, am I correct that further testing at the BCA included examination and analysis of the firearm that we looked at today?
Yes.
And that examination was performed by another scientist in your lab, Travis Millard?
Correct.
Okay. And both Mr. Copen and Mr. Millard would be in a position to describe their work specifically, correct?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions at this time.
Any cross, counsel?
Good morning, Ms. Loren.
Good morning.
Loren, do I have that right?
Lauren.
Loren, thank you. Paul Lang is my name. I'm one of the lawyers for former Officer Potter. Earl Gray's with me, and Amanda Montgomery. I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
You were at the scene and you've described a collection of a lot of evidence, which was your responsibility, correct?
Yes.
And you made a list of all the evidence that you collected, and they are reflected in reports that you authored, correct?
Yes.
And one of the pieces of evidence that you collected is labeled number 21 on your report, and it's denoted as, quotes, one plastic bag containing evidence classified as plant material. You remember collecting that, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And the plant material was taken from the driver's floor and the center console. Is that correct?
Correct.
You did that, I assume, or one of your techs did that, right?
Yes.
And you found that the plant material was familiar in terms of its appearance, was it not?
Yes.
It was marijuana, at least visually, correct?
It appeared to be consistent with that, yes.
And then you also found another piece of evidence, number 24, and the type and packaging, according to your report, is one plastic bag containing evidence classified as an item of evidence. And you described number 24 as a, quotes, digital scale from the center console. Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor, sidebar.
The objection is sustained. The jury will disregard the question that was just asked. You may continue, Mr. Ring.
Ms. Loren, did you test the plant matter as a part of your lab process?
No, I did not.
Do you have any reason to believe that, given your experience with the BCA, that it was not marijuana?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm going to let you answer. Go ahead.
I don't perform drug testing, but the visual appearance allowed me made me decide to collect it, yes.
Because you thought it was contraband?
It was plant material that looked familiar to me.
And as a part of your BCA process, you also took a blood sample from Officer Potter that evening, or had someone from a hospital do it, is that correct?
A toxicology sample was submitted to me, yes,
And that was tested as well by the BCA, right?
by a different scientist. Yes.
And nothing was found in her blood, is that correct?
I actually didn't review the toxicology results.
No further questions.
Is there anything further from the state?
State has no redirect.
No?
State has no redirect.
Okay. All right, you can step down. The state may call its next witness.
Right, this time the state calls Agent Wright Peterson.